So I'm pleased to be joined with Lorianne Dueck from IJM Canada, and you are the mobilization and advocacy program coordinator there. And today we're talking about human trafficking, just trying to bring awareness to that because it can be something that we've heard about, but we don't really know details about. So to start, would you just be able to maybe explain what human trafficking is for those who maybe have a few questions?
Sure. I can do my best to give you a brief overview. So, human trafficking, as we know, often involves deception, coercion, and violence. There's a power dynamic between the trafficker and the victim. And you might think, oh, this is something that happens all over the world, not here in Canada. But actually, that's not true. It happens all over the world. There's over 50 million people, that's more than the population of Canada, who are in situations of human trafficking or modern slavery today. But there's also people here in Canada. So it's a global issue and it requires global action.
Wow, that's yeah, because I mean, just thinking about it, you wouldn't think that it happens just in your own neighborhood. So it's crazy to hear just how spread out it is globally. And I guess that's a big reason why you guys do what you do. So kind of transitioning into that, for you as the mobilization and advocacy program coordinator, what does that mean for you? Like what does a day look like for you to help get change happening?
Sure, that's a really good question. It's exciting. So my job is a mix of public engagement, so talking with Canadians, making sure there's good stories and good content for Canadian audiences to know, what is human trafficking around the world? What is International Justice Mission doing and how can you get involved? And then the other part of my role is actually more around government engagement. So seeing where are the places that International Justice Mission can be bringing in their expertise, talking to Canadian government officials, suggesting amendments to laws so we can make sure that Canada's impact in the world is also helping make a more secure and free and safe place for everybody.
Wow. And how big of a role would you say, I mean, kind of going back to the first question, just bringing awareness to it and what it is. Like how big of a role would that play into it? Because it's like we said, a lot of people know what human trafficking is to an extent, but just not being aware that it's happening in your own community and just bringing awareness to that and being informed.
Yeah, I mean, awareness is always the first step, right? If you want to make any sort of change, you need to know first what is the problem and then what can I do about it. So that's why International Justice Mission Canada, we're so glad to be, here with CHVN talking to Manitoba about this and whoever's tuning in to say, hey, human trafficking is real. It happens to real girls, real boys, real families are affected by this. And it does require that action, whether that's interacting and educating your kids and your family, whether that's donating to an organization that works to address this and walk alongside survivors through the court process to get justice, through the potentially years of counseling it takes to get back into that place of taking agency and restarting your own lives. But you're right, awareness and education has to be step one, and then moving that quickly into action because there's people out there who need help and need support and need to be seen, right?
Absolutely. And why like why are you so passionate about that? Because I mean, just listening to you speak, you can just see it. And I mean, obviously, it's a great cause of trying to end this. But for you personally, like, what makes you so passionate about this and seeing and bringing that change and being a part of it?
Well, one, I believe that change is possible, right? As Christians, fundamentally, we believe that, redemption is possible, change is possible, life is possible, justice is possible. God makes that happen, and He asks us to be a part of bringing that into our community. So that's the first reason why I'm passionate about it, is because it's the reality that we live in, and we can bring that about. And then, secondly, is I really want to see everybody safe, right? Like this is a situation where people who are vulnerable are being taken advantage of and are end up being trapped in situations for years. And I don't want to see that happen. I don't think anyone wants to see that happen. And so it's like, how can I jump in and get involved. And part of that is me talking and telling everyone else, hey, you can also jump in and get involved because it's going to take everyone. This isn't something that just Lorianne can do. That's something even that just International Justice Mission Canada can do, although we are in almost 30 countries and we do a lot of work, but we do need everybody to be aware so we can all be protecting our own communities and all be supporting organizations that do this work.
Absolutely. And kind of going off of that, how are some practical steps of like people here in Manitoba and people just around in general? Like, what are some practical things that people can do to help support this and to help bring that change forward?
Great question. Number one is if you have kids or if you have nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters, do be talking to them about who they're talking with on social media and online. That's often where these things start, where the relationship with the trafficker starts. Obviously, they don't know it's the trafficker. And as awkward as it is to kind of talk about those private things, like who are you messaging? Have you seen any unsolicited images online? How are you doing? I would say you need to do that. That is a requirement in this day and age to have those conversations, talk about online safety, to know who younger people are talking to. So that's number one. Please do that. If you're not already, go home right now after this, have that conversation just for everyone's safety. So that's number one practical way to get involved. Number two, keep reading up. But number three is actually, I would say, is become a monthly supporter of an organization, because this is tough work. This is long work. The work of justice, of supporting victims of trafficking, of even doing government engagement takes a long time. And knowing that we have people month after month who are going to support financially, that makes a huge difference for planning. So for IJM, you can go to ijm.ca/freedom to become a monthly donor. And I would encourage you to do that, obviously, as an IJM staff. However, if there's an organization in your community that you're like, I'd like to do that as well and do a national and international organization, I would say by all means, go for it.
Absolutely. Just anything that can bring that change, right?
Exactly.
All right. And just for the last question, you're kind of alluding to it. You mentioned 50 million people. Like when you think of that, like I can't even picture just how many people, and that's obviously that's really sad. That's awful. And so it's a huge issue. So what other things is that affecting? Like how is that? Because it's a huge number. It's whole bunch of people. So it's really a bigger issue than a lot of people would think, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, and we're talking about, like, this is child labor, this is sex trafficking, like this encompasses a lot of things. And you could even take a look at, what are we buying? Do we know if that has been affected by forced labor? I mean, that's moving a little bit more into labor trafficking, but this is something that, even though it's kind of can fly under the radar, thankfully we are seeing more news coverage, so that's great, but it's something to be aware of. Or, hey, you're getting those scam text messages saying, hey, I need some money, or hey, help me out. And you're like, who is this? Like, this is also could be people who are in situations of forced labor or trafficking. So just be mindful, be empathetic, be aware, but then also know like how you can take those next steps, like know who to contact in your neighborhood, to give tips if you see something online, know what organizations are working on this. So again, it's a big issue, but if we're all working together on it and taking those consistent action steps, we know that we can reduce the crime.
Absolutely. We just anything to be part of the change. So like you were saying, just get involved, help support other people that are doing this work and just continue to try to bring a change. So, Lorian, thank you so much for joining us today and to shed a light on bringing awareness because like you said that's the first step of any sort of change. So, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Angela. Good to be with you.